Welcome to Spiritual Dialogues with Father Odonte Castro. We are here at Cariana Lay Monastic Community. I'm your host, Brother Lodi. With us is Sister Tachi.
So, Father, you were going to say that these were canonized not in the proper way, but it could be that some of them could be really saints, and the only way we could prove it is as an individual, checking it out.
Yes.
But that doesn't make sense.
Now, canonization is based on an act of faith. Because in a canonization, when we say Saint Therese of Lisieux is in heaven, is a saint, that's an act of faith. When we say Padre Pio is in heaven, that's an act of faith. Today we celebrated the feast of Pope John Paul II. And when we say he is a saint, he is in heaven, that's an act of faith. Since those are acts of faith, it must follow the rule of faith.
Yes, Father. It follows.
And the act of faith is you believe because Christ said so. It must be because Christ said so, not because Pope Francis said so. That's not faith.
Yes.
Not because I said so, not because you said so. That's not faith. Well, that's human faith, but it's not the supernatural faith that we're talking about. Because we're talking about the theological virtue of faith. So when you say that Saint Therese is in heaven, it must be based on the fact that Jesus Christ said so. But Jesus Christ never said so. It's the Vatican who said so. But the way the Vatican is supposed to reason out is like this. Christ said that if you do this, you will go to heaven. As prepared by Christ in the liturgy. If you do all of this, Christ said, you will go to heaven. And the Vatican says, Saint Therese of Lisieux did all of this step by step. Therefore, Saint Therese is in heaven not because the Vatican said so,
But because it followed.
but because Christ said, if you did this, you are going to heaven.
Yes, that's clear.
So our faith is based on the fact that Christ said so and not because the Vatican said so. So with the canonizations of Pope Francis, it's not because Christ said so, because they did not follow the process that Jesus Christ taught. That the saints canonized by Pope Francis were people canonized because the people in the Vatican said so.
That's a big difference, Father.
Oh, it is really a world of difference, you know. And it's not a basis for faith because it's only humans who said so. Even if you said because Pope Francis said so, that's not an act of faith.
Because the declaration was not based on Christ.
It did not come from it. That's right. It's not based on Christ. Now let's look at the 7 saints canonized by Pope Francis. One is Pope Paul VI. Now Pope Paul VI is a very controversial pope. Many do not believe he's a saint, which makes it very challenging to find out whether he is really a saint or not, Pope Paul VI. And they have many reasons for not wanting to canonize him. In fact, up to now in the news, so many are against the canonization of Pope Paul VI. And one reason precisely is because of his changing the Mass, the Pope Paul VI Mass, and other things. No? But you know, whether he changed the Mass or not is not a basis for rejecting his canonization or not. We have to base it on the proper basis, which is the teachings of Christ.
Yes, Father.
That Christ have taught us how to go to heaven, and we have to find out, did Pope Paul VI follow those steps? If he followed it, he's in heaven, even if he changed the Mass.
Yes.
Now, let's say in my case, just an example.
Yes, Father.
Maybe it's not a true example, but just to give an example. Let's say I know very well the process Christ gave us how to go to heaven. I know it. I'm a priest. I preach it every year because there are 3 cycles. 3 times. I have to teach people how Christ taught us how to go to heaven. So more or less, it's in my mind how to go to heaven based on the liturgy. I know it. Then I get a book on the life of Pope Paul VI. And I examine his life, which I've done. And I saw that his life conforms to the steps that Jesus Christ had laid down on how to go to heaven. So, as a person, an individual person, I can say Pope Paul VI is in heaven. He's a saint. I can say that.
Yes, yes, Father.
But it's based on my research.
But your based on research is based on what Christ said.
Yeah, we're going there. But the first point is that it is based on my research. And that cannot be an act of faith
Why?
because it's based on me, on my research. It's not based on the words of Christ. It's based on my research.
But your research is based on what Christ said, the word of Christ.
Well, that's later on now.
Okay.
That's the next step. But the first reason why I believe Pope Paul VI is a saint, is in heaven, is because of my research.
Oh, yes, okay,
So we can,
Father.
okay, so
That's the
that's
first
not the
one.
basis. Okay.
But then I go is one step deeper and I say, but my research says that that is the way that Christ taught on how we should go to heaven. So my research is based on the teachings of Christ, which means I'm correct. My faith in believing that Pope Paul VI is in heaven is based on faith in Jesus
Jesus
Christ,
Christ.
not on faith on my research.
Yes, Father.
But that is not what's happening. Because right now the whole world is believing that the 7 people canonized in the Vatican are saints. They believe it. And they have no proof. And their faith is not based on the teaching of Christ. They did not say because their lives conform to the teachings of Jesus Christ. They did not say that. They say they are saints because
Vatican said so.
Yeah, because the Vatican declared it in St. Peter's Basilica.
Yeah.
That's not faith. Meaning to say, people should doubt because it's not faith. Faith, theological faith, the Catholic, is certain. But if it is not faith, it's not certain. So for all people who are not using what I did, they are not sure that these people are saints in heaven.
He just
They
accepting.
cannot be sure. Cannot. They have no proof.
And that's what's happening. Many people just keep accepting whatever is said.
Yeah. And so we have a Vatican who with willful ignorance is declaring people to be saints. And here are the people, the lay people, out of willful ignorance also, who are believing something that is wrong.
Then people are misled. Kawawa naman kami. Tayo.
Well, you're misled, but it's willful. It's your own fault.
Yeah, you have to check.
Because you should have checked it. You can check it.
What you're saying, Father, is that they have announced it. I don't have to believe it. I can do my own and double check if it is in accordance to Christ's teaching, and then I can make my own decision
Yeah, in other words,
based on faith because of that.
You should not base your
On what they
decisions
said.
on willful ignorance.
Yeah,
On
which is
ignorance.
which is what you're saying. That's what
Yeah.
after announcing like that without any proof, that's willful ignorance.
In other words,
Don't
you
do
should base it on knowledge.
Knowledge.
And your knowledge must be based on your research work, your studies, and so forth and so
Yes,
on.
yes.
But
Yes.
we lay people does not concern ourselves about these processes. We rely on the preaching, on the homily of the priest, so that whatever the priest said in the homily, sometimes we just
Then don't.
agree that then we are misled, Father.
Well, intelligent people, even if you listen to homilies, should double check what you're listening to.
But we are only ordinary people, Father. We don't have much knowledge or discernment about spiritual matters.
You see, the process of canonization is a process on how to go to heaven.
You should,
You want to go to heaven.
should know.
And
Yes.
Tachi knows wants to go to heaven. So you should find out how to go to
Yes.
heaven. And
Ourselves.
you cannot depend on a mistake.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, Father. That's
If not, we are guilty also of willful ignorance.
Yeah, it's a very common
That's
sin.
all you need.
yeah.
Common sin. In other words, how many times, let's say, or how many hours do you spend, for instance, in watching television?
Many hours, Father.
Claudia is an actor. He watches his show, of course, to find out if he's acting well or not. And that could be many hours.
Many hours. Okay.
And because he spent many hours watching television, he has less time to check on how to go to heaven. So he's willfully spending time
Yes, to be ignorant
watching his shows
and being ignorant. Allah.
rather than studying how to go to heaven. So his ignorance is willful.
Yeah.
But Father, I don't have the writings of the processes Christ said in the
Never
in the
mind.
Mass.
What Father is saying, not talking about the
Yeah.
canonization now. You're talking now of our own willful ignorance. Is that what you said?
Even the process of canonization, you can only learn it through prayer. Remember,
Oh,
the
I
supernatural truths can only be learned through prayer. You don't need books for that. No, you cannot.
Yes, Father.
But you have to spend time.
Yeah.
Knock and the door will be open. Ask and it will be given to you.
Yeah, he didn't say read and it will be given to you.
Yes.
Or enter the seminary and you will
Yes.
find. Or he says ask and pray. Those are commands to pray, to ask, to seek. Are
Yes.
commands to pray.
Yes, Father. So we're all, at least to let the people listening know that that's one example of willful ignorance. And if we don't check it ourselves and just accept things, that is another. If we don't go
Yeah.
learn and find out, we are also guilty of the same. And that what did St. Thomas Aquinas say about willful ignorance is
Willful
the damnation of our soul.
Damning sin.
Damning sin, that's
sin,
it.
yeah.
That's it.
Look at all the big disaster this can cause. Very big disaster. In the old Catholic Church, they always presented the way to heaven like that. In the liturgy, which now is no longer there. You cannot find it anymore in the liturgy. Then they present to us, like before, the life of Saint Therese of Lisieux. And he shows that Saint Therese followed it step by step. The reason why the Catholic Church did that before is if you touch your Lord and wants to go to heaven, you will study the teaching of Jesus Christ in the liturgy and follow and imitate the example of Saint Therese. Because she was following Christ.
So it is also important to read the life of Saint Therese.
It's not necessary, but it's inspiring
Yes, Father.
to see a person, human being like you, doing exactly what Christ have taught. Is something very inspiring. Saint Therese doesn't teach you; he inspires you.
I see. Yeah.
Now let's see these 7 newly canonized persons. Like one of them. Never mind who they are.
Yeah.
But one of them did not follow the teachings of Christ. At least the Vatican has not proven that he followed step by step the teachings of Christ on how to go to heaven.
Wow.
In fact, he have violated some of the teachings of Christ on how to go to heaven. And now he's presented to you as a saint, and you imitate him.
Oh boy.
My
Yeah.
God.
Yes.
I will go to hell. So.
Yeah. Yes, of,
Of
course.
course.
Yes. Yes. That's
Father,
right.
I'm sorry. We have only 1 minute, please.
So there you see the dire consequence. It's not a very small matter, this process of canonization, Pope Francis canonized 7 and nobody's objecting. And well, there are some people who are objecting, but there are very few, etc. And the consequence, if this is not corrected, it can be millions of souls.
Yes.
Because millions are following the
Okay.
canonization process. Many went to Rome to observe it and to venerate those saints. And we are not even sure that they are
And
saints.
then they will follow their footsteps.
They will be following their footsteps. In fact, they're beginning to
God.
have demonstration to follow these people.
Yeah.
And they are not even
you imagine
sure
where
that they
they're
are in
going?
heaven. Yeah, that's true.
That's tragic.
Then we will be misled if we do not discover ourselves, if we will not ask the, we will not, if we are not, we will
Careful.
not pray to be enlightened about the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah, if you continue your own willful
Full
ignorance, you really be lost. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Father. And thank you for watching Dialogues with Father Rodon de Castro. Please continue watching so that we will understand this willful ignorance, so that we will be saved and we will be in heaven with God. Thank you very much.
Hosanna, Hosanna, in excelsis, Hosanna.